Ah, here we are. Is it my turn or your turn?
Either way.
All right. Here we go, guys. This is the glamorous Objective-C programming language. Now, I wanted to make sure that we put a pronunciation on here because there is some discussion on the pronunciation of this language. People don't want to say it's Objective-C because what are you objecting to?
Right.
It is Objective-C because when it was originally developed, it was coded, I believe, object-oriented programming in C. So it's Objective-C. It's very commonly seen in Apple frameworks and Mac OS X programming. You also see it heavily on the Apple mobile devices, such as the iPhone devices, the iPad.
And really strongly came out of Steve Jobs and his rogue ninja team of Next Step developers.
Oh yeah, like when Steve Jobs left Apple back, what was it, the 80s, whatever,
yeah.
And he created the next company. He created a set of libraries of the foundation for the Objective-C and Coca language.
So a lot of times when you're using Objective-C, you see things like NSString, NSObject, which is the Next Step object.
Right, they just didn't change the name later on.
Yeah.
Because I think that Apple bought Next, and then Steve Jobs then pushed the Objective-C language into the Apple development, and that's kind of where that marriage happened.
With those developers, yeah. So this is the foundation for Cocoa and Cocoa Touch, which is the GUI components of the Cocoa is Mac OS and Cocoa Touch is iOS. You know, where you're literally touching the screen to interact. The language exploded really in early 2010. It's now 2015, and the language is still around. But as Apple mobile devices became widespread, they were very popular and became very widely used.
So one of the things that Brian and I wanted to mention was that we believe in our hearts that Objective-C was never designed to be as popular as it became. And when you guys start programming in that language, you'll see, number one, from the Apple community and their reaction to simple, basic questions. Like, for example, you're writing something in a program, any graphical program. Let's say you want to know what the text on a button says. So when you click the button, your program will say, you click the button where the text says this. Well, in languages like C#.NET, Visual Basic, and that sort of thing, I mean, you couldn't possibly have an easier mechanism to do that. Now, in Objective-C, in Coca, it's not hard, but it's not intuitive. And when you go to, and Brian and I, this is actually a real life example that I'm talking about here. When you go to some of these Apple discussion boards, you'll see someone ask that question, and the response will literally be, Brian?
I can't imagine a circumstance where you would need to know this or do this. So you have the Starbucks arrogance mixed in with the difficulty of how the framework was inconsistently laid out, and all mixed up in a nice, pompous response like that.
Although Objective-C 2.0 has made some great strides towards this, you can pretty much bank on memory management being manual and completely controlled by the developer.
And a lot of reason for this is, namely on the mobile devices, where you have to be extremely cognizant of how you're utilizing memory.
Right, because they're so limited in resources.
Yeah, right. Next is Java. We've kind of hinted to the evil brother of C#, which is Java.
Evil brother, or is C# because here's the thing.
C# might be, yeah.
Because we put on this first line, it's similar to C#, or C# is similar to Java, because when you look at the timeline, Java came out before C#.
Absolutely, that's true. Either way, they're just as popular. Really, it's kind of one or the other. It doesn't make much of a difference. Some developers complain about its execution time being slow. And there's issues with cross-platform promises. So Java is supposed to be something that's very usable, something that's very functional, and something that will execute on any platform. In reality, it doesn't really work out that way.
Absolutely a lie. And that has been one of the big, deep, dark secret lies of Java for a decade.
And it's one of the things that's killing Java now.
Because now there's actually real languages that work cross-platform.
Yeah.
So
one of the other complaints that some people have with Java is that it's forced exception handling. So it's a bit motherly in how it wants you to gear your program. Obviously, exception handling is always a good idea, and the way that they force you to implement it is smart, but the fact that it's forced bothers some developers from a stylistic standpoint. But it is a very powerful language, and it's very widely used. It's very widely used in government. You see it in desktop applications, web applications, mobile applications. Usually when your browser crashes.
It's because of a Java problem.
Probably a Java applet running in the browser. It's very popular in BlackBerry and Android development. BlackBerry applications and Android applications are both written in Java. the mobile Java framework. But despite some of its shortcomings, it's still preferred by many developers today. It's still very commonly used. You do need to know the language. No matter where you go, you're probably going to run into Java.
A lot of developers live and die by Java.
And it's not going to go away anytime soon.
There are some people that are so in love with Java that they won't accept anything else. And whether that's a good or bad thing, but that's just how it is.
One of the things that is an advantage of Java is if you are a company that needs developers, with Java you can't really have an atrocious developer.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point.
So one of the things I think we had talked about some time ago is that with C or C++, if you have a developer that is not very good, you can have a very, very bad and very destructive program.
Oh, yeah.
But in languages like C# and Java, because there's so much hand-holding and because the frameworks do so much for you, you really can't hurt anything. You really can't spread damage. There's no collateral damage outside of your program.
Yeah, that's true.
So you might not be able to excel as a developer in Java the way that you could in C, C++, for example, but you also can't tank like you can in C, C++. So for risk mitigation purposes, a lot of companies, and generally the government for this reason, uses Java in a lot of their applications.
Another reason why Java is also popular, like if you were to go through job listings, you'll see most job listings say, we want you to know Java. In the late 90s, in early 2000s, there was a big push to write in Java.
Yeah.
So a lot of code that exists that runs in production environments has Java components. That they may not be using Java as a primary language now, but when you have to support something or fix something, you have to understand the Java language.
Yeah, you have to know the language. Another thing is that while this massive push was happening for Java and while the hype cycle was kind of at its greatest, the school systems also got on board because they saw it as a less expensive alternative to having to teach with some of the costly compilers that they were running and IDEs that they were running. So a lot of schools systems retooled and began teaching Java as the end-all be-all languages to students, which is really a bad choice.
Kind of a shame. Yeah.
It's not a good foundational language to learn.
Yep. You should never learn on Java. Yeah. You're absolutely right.
So you don't really start learning to cook a pie without learning how to make dough. I mean, it's crazy. So, but it is what it is. Java will be around for quite a long time.